making the hard day-to-day, hour-to-hour decisions. Something that goes back to the quality circle model. It's got lots of other names, which we don't have time to go into now, but somehow we have to depend upon the people at the bottom and the people in the middle to come forth with their ideas and to act as the unpaid internal consultants to government. I think that's probably the area of greatest promise and the one that we seem to have lost track of. Secondly, the report suggests opening the books. I think we need to open the books to citizens and to employees of our public sector organizations. I think one of the ways to open those books is to use technology. And as Lorraine suggests, there's a lot of emerging technology out there which can be used to do this. I think that we need to look at the models that we have for letting people gain access to information that the bureaucrats or the legislators otherwise have locked up, and that the technology is moving quite rapidly to enable us to do that. So this is a whole area of exploration, which we need to get into, and we hope to do some of this through the productivity sector. Just to show you how much ignorance there is out there, let me ask one question. How many of you know what the local government information network is? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 of you. Everybody here should be plugged into it. It's called LOGIN, Logan, or the Local Government Information Network. It's got, I don't know, maybe 50,000 units of information on it about innovations in state and local government. It always surprises me that they are so inept about marketing themselves. And we work with them closely, and they've helped sponsor these awards for a long time. I think if I may have an 800 number here to call. It costs money to tap into this network, but it's money with a quick payback. Right? If you call 1-800-328-1921, 800-328-1921. Tell them we recommended here. They'll send you a brochure. There's another network which ICMA has that's called Local Exchange. Similarly, you can tap into. So I think that's one of the best investments in just a small indication of what we're overlooking. I thought that Dick's comments were provocative. Certainly went beyond the ordinary, and I agree with you that what Osborne's got is basically a restatement of the agenda we've been building for a long time, and that we need to go beyond it if we are to really shake up the system and bring about tangible change. I think we also need to do two things that go beyond the present agenda. One, in terms of structural change, is to consider generic agencies or missionless agencies, whatever agencies whose mission is nothing more than to deliver public services, A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. And there are models for that in the private sector, obviously, where corporations shift from one service area to another. But agencies that can compete with each other within the public sector, under public control, accountable to the public, not privatized, but can deliver anything and can compete on any type of function. I think we also need term limits, but we need term limits for bureaucrats as well. Something that sort of follows from what Lorraine was suggesting, but I've been writing about as well. I think it's more than rotating memberships on committees. It's the J. Edgar Hoover syndrome. How long do you want somebody sitting in, a certain position, sitting on the information, controlling the organization and the employees? I think the longer somebody sits there, the more they get seduced by power, and the more they get a little bit stale as to what they're doing. We could do much better if we began to rotate people, not fire, rotate them. Certainly not talking about the end of tenure in organizations and academia, but rotate them to shake them up, to shake up the organization, make them, make those organizations more responsive. In terms of measurement, I happen to think that measurement is a very powerful tool. I think, and I said this to the Government Accounting Standards Board at one of their hearings, that you need to let the localities define the measures they want to use, but you have to require them to use measures. Then give them an agenda or a menu of measures that they could use as models, and let them define and utilize what makes sense at whatever level they're at. But I certainly think we need measures to hold organizations accountable and for organizations to understand whether they're making any progress. In terms of the culture, which is one thing that Mel brought up, I think there's a third action that's in front of us this week that goes beyond or is linked to the Winter Report and the NPR, et cetera, and that's the National Community and Service Trust Act, which just passed the Senate, which Clinton expects to sign almost immediately. I think that has broad-reaching implications for a cultural change in our society as it brings more people at a very young age into contact with government services and a positive view of the public service that we really haven't seen since the 1930s. I hope that that many people will get recruited to government by this Community and Service Trust Act, as it's called. But we also have to understand how difficult it is to push that through, and that not every Democrat voted for it in the Senate, and that the vote was not overwhelming. There's a lot of skepticism there. Finally, in terms of this notion, why wasn't the Winter Report publicized? Well, it's a problem we all suffer from. That the good things that are going on and a lot of the good thought that goes on just doesn't bubble to the surface because the press doesn't find it newsworthy. At best, they'll bury it someplace. There's a very deep feeling in our society that's anti-bureaucratic, and it can be healthy, but it's also reinforced daily by the movies, by the comics, by the newspapers, by people on the air, by songs, all types of manifestations of our culture that beats up on the bureaucracy. And generally, anything that is something where we've slipped up becomes newsworthy, or potentially so, where we prescribe what might be done, where we say, these are the good things, these are the models we want to use, gets relegated, someplace else, the cutting room floor, let's say. I don't know how we can, sort of burst through that bubble, but I think that's something we need to give some attention to, so how we can get the attention of the public. But then you listen to us, and you're entitled to a few minutes if you'd like to come up and respond.
This is really terrific for me to come here and listen both while we're having coffee and hear to these reactions.